Hi, this is Roger Green, host of the Surfing the MASH Tsunami podcast. This week we're offering 5 conversations from episode 22, our discussion on the Healthy Livers, Healthy Lives Coalition, stemming from a presentation at the EASL Congress, joined by Jörn Schattenberg, Louise Campbell, and Coalition Chair Jeff Lazarus. From the vault, we have a discussion from 2023, how regulators and some providers hear and process patients' needs. This conversation focuses on policy-related issues. It starts with Louise stating that she left NHS several years ago because every patient her unit treated, and I quote, "we saw too late," end of quote. She discussed some of the resistance to even doubling the scan volume within healthcare systems she knows. Jeff notes this is why political will is so important. He references viral hepatitis, where a long multi-stage process that was patient-unfriendly converted to a decentralized point-of-care testing system that worked a lot faster. The key there, match the resource need to the level of resource that would be available in a motivated decision structure, and then motivate the decision structure to take advantage. I should focus to primary care practitioners, most of whom all over the world feel overworked and might resist adding any work burden to their already staggering loads. Jeff suggests this is the point of FIB4, which could be standard on all electronic medical record systems, so that the primary care provider merely need look. Jörn approaches will from a different direction, the cost of inaction. Physicians will not act when they cannot effect a solution, so that telling the patient about their disease will merely leave them demoralized. So, Jörn continues, we need to give providers tools that will empower patient change, thereby empowering physicians to talk to them. Jeff asks, do we not raise awareness because we don't have out-of-the-box solutions? He suggests non-drug solutions, for example, supportive digital apps for people looking to lose weight or increase their physical activity. He also talks about social prescribing and ways that local governments can provide a range of support, as many do for patients with HIV today. He points out that to generate support, we will need peer support from professional societies and other groups that can drive change and enhance the power of patient advocacy. We don't talk about public policy and MASLD very much on this podcast, except when somebody named Jeff, usually Lazarus, sometimes McIntyre, is with us, or when we're discussing regulatory decisions. This conversation moves fast and covers a broad range of issues, so just sit back, listen, learn, absorb. When you're done, join the conversation in our LinkedIn discussion group.
Louise Campbell.
That's why I left the NHS. I worked in a highly specialised unit dealing with 2,000 to 3,000 fibre scans a year, seeing everybody too late. So the only way, having developed that size of system, was to come out. And there is obstruction. Hepatology want to do their own scans, but hepatology don't have the capacity to double those scans. And they need to more than double them. We need to look at different mechanisms of how we provide non-invasive diagnostics. And I think your figures were, you would need 800,000, that would increase to 30 million. But that's doable, that's scalable, but not in the processes that we currently have. We cannot do that from inside health organisations. Our configuration, our setup, Dan Fortman, the team from St. George's published an abstract at EASL that showed, although it can be done and you can really get into those hard to reach, difficult populations, this is only for fibrosis. This is not for the risk of high risk cardiovascular and diabetes, but it is not cost effective at that level to do it with the way they're configured.
Jeffrey Lazarus.
But this goes back to the importance of political will. I mean, I hate to say where there's a will, there's a way, but I really think there is. And let's take a look, Jörn, at like viral hepatitis. So there's a lot of people who needed to get tested. They were antibody positive. They were told that they had to come back. They had to give another blood sample, and then they were tested, given confirmatory testing. It was a long process stretching not just weeks, but often months. Then you look at what can we do with point of care. And you put a gene expert into the field across sub-Saharan Africa where there's a scarcity of labs. You had a lot of gene experts with excess capacity because they were out there for TB or HIV viral load. And you start testing for hepatitis C. Now you have countries like Australia that are rolling out gene experts, the decentralized testing, confirmatory testing for hepatitis C all across the entire country. So we have point of care testing that can work, which you know very well, Louise, with the FibroScan, among others, that can work in the field. So if there's a will, there's a way. Remember, even in low-income countries where the cost effectiveness threshold might even be as low as 1,000 per life year, you can even divide up what would it cost for the capital to have that equipment in addition to the actual testing. We need to look at, every time I hear someone put up a barrier, we need to look at, well, what is there a reasonable solution if there's the will to do it? And there's no reason we can't be testing everyone suspected of fibrosis, certainly in high income countries, but in my opinion, all over the world, if we want to. Look at the massive scale up we did during COVID-19 when labs were failing us and we were able to develop the antigen tests remarkably quickly, a whole whole range of antigen tests from many different producers, produced often in parallel. There's a lot we can do if the world wants to develop NITs to get better sensitivity and specificity for fibrosis. Within hepatology, people will say, well, we're doing a lot, and we are, right? We're reading the articles and the reviews all the time, but there's a lot more that can be done so we can move a lot faster and reach those people who are in need of being diagnosed.
Oh, yeah, it's all about solutions. All about solutions.
Roger Green.
Louise, and I think where there's a will, there's a way is really important. But I want to take will from a slightly different perspective, which is that of primary care practitioners. Okay, since we're going to count on them to do the lion's share of the work. I'm going to take a U.S.-centric perspective on this, but I don't think it's that different in other developed countries and maybe worse in underdeveloped countries, which is primary care physicians feel like they've got way too much to do and not enough time to do it in. And the last thing they're looking for is something else they've got to learn about and then something they have to do with it. So I'm wondering against that backdrop, how we induce will in that pivotal population, what thoughts you have about that? I couldn't agree with you more about the approach. Now the question is, how do we get these people to care more?
Well, it's a big question, and we've been going around and around, this question at conferences and in various fora and discussions. I think they need to be aware of the consequences of inaction. So we can look at the economic inaction, which is a bit distant from them, but we can also look at the health inaction. What happens when your patient has fibrosis, you're not even doing a FIB4? I mean, it's not about asking everyone in primary care to necessarily fibroscan, but you can start with a FIB4, even if it's not the best test, and you will find some people who need a confirmatory test, and some of those will have fibrosis, and some of those will even have cirrhosis. So we need to explain what that cost of inaction is, but also how little cost there is. I mean, I remember just talking to my own provider, why are they not doing a FIB4 on everyone? Well, there are issues with the electronic medical system. Someone said, it's really easy. You just have to tick the box. I said, you shouldn't even have to tick the box. I mean, really from the beginning, if you're doing all the tests, they're going to give you all of the components of the FIB4. Certainly age is the easy one, but ALT, AST, and platelets as well. Then why are you not just calculating it? So I think they need to understand the cost of inaction. Then, we need to look at, are there large GP practices that can have a FibroScan or similar tool? And also the important role of serum-based biomarkers, because there's a lot of future there. I mean, if you can test the blood, that's how we made a paradigm change, I think, in hepatitis C, because we were able to do reflex testing without needing another sample.
Jörn Schattenberg.
Let me get started with an observation, a discussion we had in the team today, Jeff, and it's actually around the cost of inaction, but also, of course, we got to prime the field to be ready for action. Because one of my physicians was saying, my patient came back to me totally upset because we wrote that he had significant fibrosis. So his elastography was above 8. We felt we should send the message that something has to be changed. But we got to then provide the tools to empower the patient to change things. If we do think it's not the hepatologist that will take care of the patient. So his stiffness was below 10, but slightly elevated. And we got to be ready to handle all these patients. I think that's where some of the pushback comes from the field, where they're saying, well, we can't manage all these patients. So I know you thought about this, or any comments?
Well, first off, do we not raise awareness because, we don't have out-of-the-box solutions? I mean, if people have these diseases and conditions, they need to know. And I think we do have the solutions. So for that patient, there might be a digital solution, a recommendation of supportive apps if the person needs to lose weight or to exercise more. In some countries like the UK, where you are, Louise, Orca and others are approving apps that can be prescribed and reimbursed. That's something that needs to go faster, but there's certainly non-pharmaceutical interventions that can be recommended. And if the person needs the support, and this we learned a lot from the HIV field, there's social prescribing, and there's some debate about how much it works, but this would be linking the person to the right community service. So, for example, in the Basque country, I'm in Spain now, in that autonomous community, HIV care goes hand in hand with the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Social Welfare. So you're also getting the kind of social support you need along with the health support you need. So if, again, the patient you have, Jörn, comes from a challenging social situation, they might be linked up to a community food pharmacy or some other kind of service. And people don't need them, don't realize how many there are in the community. They always need more funding, more support, more people paid and volunteers. But there are a lot of services, and some healthcare departments are well linked up with them and some are not. But it does mean the field needs to change, because as we find more people, you will have to take care of more people. And for those who don't get a pharmacological drug, I mean, resmetirom's not approved yet in Europe, obviously, but there are other drugs that patient may need or may be on. There are other solutions. We don't have the kind of peer support like HIV, cancer, diabetes, and other fields have. And the big support or the big intervention in viral hepatitis was when people like Charles Gore, who was running ELPA and then the World Hepatitis Alliance, said we need to actually strengthen or even create patient advocacy groups, and we need to link them and work with the clinicians in those countries to do that. So they didn't just appear out of nothing. They got support because clinicians like yourself help them. And I know you personally work quite a bit with patient advocacy groups, but a lot of your colleagues across the country and across Europe don't. And that's the kind of change we're going to need to do from the liver field. So there's digital solutions, there's community solutions, there's peer solutions, and probably many others that I'm not thinking of right now.
Yeah, and I agree. And I'd really like your comment about the digital therapeutics potentially. And as a team in Homburg, we're working on this now. So I think there's many offers we can do.
And now, back to Roger.
We hope you've enjoyed this recording. If you have any questions or comments about the content of this conversation or the entire episode, please put them in the reviews section of the page from which you downloaded this conversation, or send an email to questions@surfingmash.com. Next week, Louise will be moderating an episode about challenges in communication between patient and provider and its implications on other systems issues. I'll miss the taping, but cannot wait to hear what emerges. Until then, stay safe, surf on. We'll see you on the podcast. Bye-bye now.